The Rams are reportedly significantly more worried than they were 4 months ago about Puka Nacua. How will this impact whether or not an extension gets done with Puka this offseason? Could they really consider trading one of, if not the best receiver in the National Football League? We got some inside info on that. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramily, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available over on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, do us a huge favor. Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and if you want to support every single episode of Locked On Rams, drop a like, drop a comment down below. Podcast listeners, write us a review, give us 5 stars, and we'll read it on the show. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. I've covered LA sports for over a decade, 24/7 sports, Bleacher Report, SI, Dodgers Nation. I also do NFL radio for Westwood One. Today I'm flying solo, the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers. Out today, we'll be back tomorrow. We've got a jam-packed show. We've got an insider report on Puka Nacua and the Rams and everything that's gone on this offseason and how that could impact if the Rams are going to give him a monster extension. We're also talking about wide receivers in the draft. There is a wide receiver that the Rams have been linked to. His stock is going down, and I watched a lot of Mekhi Lemon over the weekend. Gonna tell you what I saw. We'll talk some Mekhi Lemon. But first, this episode of Locked On Rams is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's talk about Puka Nacua. I know this is Locked On Puka, but he's the biggest story about the Rams right now. And I have some things I want to say and get on my chest about Puka Nacua and some insider reports. And we are going to go through this report from NFL reporter, really the gold standard when it comes to Rams reporting, Jordan Rodriguez of The Athletic. She was primarily doing the Rams for so many years. She had the 11 Personnel podcast, which was incredible. Now she does another NFL podcast, and she's really more just national NFL. But she does talk a lot of Rams. She covers the Rams, and she knows the Rams about as good as anyone. So when she talks Rams, you better listen because her sources are as good as it gets. So let's dive into this report from Jordan Rodriguez, where she writes, quote, "The Los Angeles Rams won't sign Puka Nacua to an extension until they believe that the all-pro receiver has matured enough to stop the off-the-field issues that have marred his character over the past year," according to a report, which it goes on to talk about in the report that, quote, "But it's my understanding that their concerns significantly increased," and that being the Rams, and it's about Puka Nacua, especially about Nacua's well-being as the offseason continued. While Nacua checked into the facility of his own volition, a source with knowledge of his decision said the team is certainly glad he did that. So that's a positive. The team is happy about the fact that Puka Nacua, proactive, by his own volition, said, hey, I'm going to seek help. I'm going to just try to better myself. I understand that things aren't 100% right now, and whether that was an optics move to show the Rams that he wanted to get better, wanted to learn from things that have happened this offseason, who knows? But the bottom line is Jordan Rodriguez reporting that the Rams did approve of that and that they're glad that he did that. Then they go on to say, in the background of all this has also been the question of Nacua's upcoming contract extension, especially after the Seattle Seahawks in late March signed star receiver Jackson Smith-Njigba to a 4-year, $168.6 million deal. Smith-Njigba, like Nacua, was entering the final season of his rookie deal. Although the Seahawks had already picked up his 5th-year option, the Rams made it clear publicly and even more firmly behind the scenes in recent weeks that Nacua will have to correct his off-field behavior to earn the type of contract his league-leading play would typically merit. So, takeaway from that part is that Jordan Rodriguez reporting that, hey, this is not saying that, hey, it's over. We think that his off the field antics and things that he's done and the things that have transpired make just the idea of giving him $42 to $45 million per year and making him one of, if not the highest paid receivers in the National Football League, is off the table. Clearly, it's on the table still. Clearly, the Rams would like to see a world where they feel good about giving Puka Nacua a pen and saying, sign here. You're going to be a Ram throughout your prime. You're going to help Matthew Stafford and the rest of us win a Super Bowl next season. That is what they want. They believe in him, and they think that this isn't irreversible. And that is my takeaway from this, is Jordan Rodriguez saying, hey, they want to see him correct his off-field behavior to earn it. So that tells you that, hey, this is not a breakup, right? A breakup is when it's over. It's, hey, they were at a point of no return. You did something that I can't forgive you for. I'm blocking you. I'm changing my number. You can't text me. Don't DM me. Don't email me. Don't do any of that stuff, right? It's kind of one of those things where if your wife is still mad at you, if your girlfriend's still mad at you, if your significant other is still mad at you, that's a good thing, because it means that they just want you to get better and screw your head on correctly. It's when they're not mad at you anymore and they're just done. Like, there's no communication. We are done. You're traded. You're off this team, that kind of stuff. I think this is more of the Rams are just disappointed in a player that they believe in. They're disappointed about someone that they feel like, A, is deep down inside someone who represents what they hope Rams culture is about as far as a playing style. And for most of his time here, he was a universally liked fan favorite, not just by Rams fans, but by fans around the league. He's someone that was social media friendly, big smile at Lakers games, a lovable guy, and then things have changed in the last 4 to 6 months. But it would go on to say McVay has publicly referred to Nacua as a kid whose heart he trusts, but Nacua is an adult, a 24-year-old man with an infant who has the autonomy and resources to seek help and has done so. Next, he'll need to show McVay and other members of the organization who have had their sincere belief in him tested that he can stay out of trouble. Go on to say that this is something where it's not outside the realm of possibilities where the Rams could go a different direction. And I'll give you my thoughts on what I think is truly in play here versus what this is saying. But Rodriguez writes, and I'll just add this. Let's not pretend that any Rams player outside of future Hall of Famer Aaron Donald has ever been completely untouchable. Since 2021, McVay has pivoted from a former franchise quarterback, Jared Goff, and a fan favorite franchise receiver, Cooper Kupp, and the Rams even engaged briefly in trade talks about a receiver who McVay intensely pursued in free agency just 1 year ago, Davante Adams. So on that piece, I will say yes, of course, Aaron Donald, you're talking about one of the best players that's ever played this game. They're not going to entertain the idea of moving on from him under any circumstances. He got into a bar thing a couple years back that turned out to be something that they moved on from. Nothing serious or anything like that. But yeah, Cooper Kupp's a really good example. Cooper Kupp, they felt like they wanted to move on from him. But look at the players that they moved on for the most part. It's players that, yes, they were formerly big impact players, Cooper Kupp and Jared Goff. And you could go beyond that in Jalen Ramsey, and there's examples. I mean, Cam Akers they drafted, they didn't feel like he was going to be a guy. McVay liked Kyren Williams over Cam Akers for the longest time. But why did they move on from Jared Goff? They didn't think he was good enough to be the quarterback for this team to get them to the mountaintop and help them win a Super Bowl. Why they move on from Cooper Kupp? They thought that his skills had eroded and that he wasn't worth the contract that he was given. Davante Adams, last offseason, McVay wanted him badly. They got him. He led the league in touchdowns. What did I tell you? Guys, I know stuff, and I knew that they were interested in looking to trade Davante Adams, and that's why I was telling you the very start of the offseason when I saw the comments, D-Mac, you're crazy, you want to trade Davante Adams, what are you talking about? I was just saying what I was hearing, and they're going to keep him, and I still think he can be a very effective receiver in his role for this team, but why'd they go off of Davante Adams potentially, or just entertain the idea, explore the possibility of it, is because they felt like they could get better. With Puka Nacua, yeah, for better or worse, there's the behavior and that kind of stuff, but they also know that if you were to trade Puka Nacua, and let's say you could get 2 first-round picks, what would you hope to get with one of those 2 first-round picks? Another Puka Nacua, right? And that's why it doesn't make sense to me. And look, if they don't believe in him as far as the kind of player he is, and if they think that there's some things that might ail him moving forward, he's not going to give you that kind of production, then maybe. But I know they don't think that. You saw the year he just had. Him and Jackson Smith and Jigba were by far the 2 best receivers. And he has chemistry and a connection with Matthew Stafford. And let's just call this what it is. Will the Rams really, even for a second this offseason, look to deal Puka Nacua? I think the answer to that is an emphatic, in all caps, bold, N-O. Because we can do a 2-hour show, a 5-hour show, a 10-hour show, or we can just do a 10-second show. Because the truth is, no Puka, no Super Bowl. Period, end of story, hard stop. And you have Matthew Stafford playing at an MVP level for maybe 1 or 2 more seasons. And this whole entire quick reload, rebuild, where the Rams went from a team that looked like they were headed for a down-to-the-studs rebuild to Matthew Stafford gets healthy and starts to play the best football of his career. McVay's re-energized, and you lose to the eventual Super Bowl champion for the last couple of seasons. And what happens? You trade arguably not even arguably, I mean, without question, the number 1 piece outside of Matthew Stafford. No, it's just not going to happen. The Rams aren't going to do that. But I will tell you, coming up next, why at least you could think about this from the other point of view. If it's my team, not considering this for a second. But we'll look at the other side of this next, about what the future holds for Puka Nacua and the Rams. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams. Workplace chaos, deadline stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to still fill sitting open when the pressure's on and you need the right hire. This is a job for Sponsored Jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. Skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat line that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of the show will get $75 in sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And we are off and running here on Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, a big shout out to those everyday listeners out there watching and listening to every single episode of Locked On Rams. And if you haven't yet, do us a huge favor. Join the Everydayer Club. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You get ad-free audio. You get exclusive content. You get members-only access to a Discord channel where you can talk Rams football with other Rams fans. So definitely go today. Go to lockedonrams.supercast.com to try it today. But okay, let's pick up on the Puka Nacua conversation. Then we're going to talk about some NFL draft wide receiver options. So with Puka Nacua and his situation, let's look at the other side of this. The other side of the coin is if you were ever going to consider Puka Nacua, which I would not do under any circumstances this offseason, unless there's just one more thing that's outrageous, right? And things like that don't get figured out. He's a Ram. I mean, I think that if he were to do something else, I've been season all day. If you were to do something else, then that could be a point where, hey, you really start to say, hey, at this point, you just don't respect the organization, right? But let's look at it from the other perspective, right? His trade market outside of the off-the-field stuff, from a player standpoint, is about as high as it's ever going to get. Entering the final year of his rookie contract, he wasn't a first-round pick. He's not going to be one of those guys that has that fifth-round option, things like that. He is inarguably a top 5 receiver in the National Football League. You can make the case he's 1 or 2. It just doesn't matter really at that point. I mean, he's a top-tier guy, and those are the type of guys, especially in their primes, especially young, that are going to fetch high draft capital. So if there's a team out there that's willing to overlook some of the off-the-field stuff, even though it is what it is, right? I'm just from a pure business standpoint, how teams look at this from a GM standpoint, right? They're not looking at this from a PR standpoint necessarily, right? They're looking at this as, hey, how do I put together the best roster that can A, help me win a Super Bowl, and B, help me save my job here? Because the NFL GM is like less than 5 years, right? It's the NFL. It's the not-for-long league. That applies to GMs. It applies to coaches. So if you're a GM out there, you say, well, I get Puka Nacua in my building, that's going to take my offense to the next level. And if you're the Rams, you got to know that, hey, if you're not going to sign him to this deal, then what's the next best thing, right? Are you going to franchise tag him? The Rams haven't done that since LaMarcus Joyner in 2018. Typically, they're not a franchise that does that. Also, they're typically a franchise that waits until training camp before the season to get deals done for players like Puka Nacua. So I just think that, look, the only other thing is, are you using this to allow those other doubts about Puka creep into your psyche that would have you push pause or at least think about the idea of maximizing his value? Because if you're the Rams, you can say to yourself, hey, well, I mean, he has a very physical style of play that definitely sets him up for more injuries than it would for some other players. You want Puka to be Puka. He's not going to change his style of play. That's what makes him elite. And then you might say to yourself, wow, that's a big investment for a guy that's going to leave his heart out on the field. It's going to play big and physical, and things happen. And the older you get, the higher your risk are for injuries. And you could also say to yourself, well, yeah, it's great, Matthew Stafford playing MVP level. Yes, we got some really good win-now pieces, but we don't have a successor for Matthew Stafford. And if we load up on some more first-round picks, then does Joe Burrow become an option at some point? Then do you have the draft capital to trade up for Arch Manning if he has the year that you're hoping he does next season, and he is the clear-cut number one? I know the Rams internally like him. They haven't seen enough from him to push all the chips in the middle of the table for him. But, I mean, at some point you have to consider who's going to be the quarterback of the future. All that is true. Yes, that if you really were over the whole Puka Nacua experience, that's some way that you could talk yourself into it. But look, is he a distraction? Has he been a distraction? He has. Do you want to have to babysit him? No. Do you want him to grow up and mature? You do. But I just don't think that the Rams, where they're at, they're not going to do this because they just traded for Trent McDuffie and gave him a big deal. They've set this team up for win now mode. And I think that the bottom line is they're just not going to do this. I do kind of look at the mentorship. I mean, should they have kept Cooper Kupp? And Kupp seemed like, hey, when he was in the building, you didn't have this stuff going on with Puka Nacua. And I'm not saying that Devontae Adams is not a great mentor or anything like that, but clearly, I mean, I don't know if you could draw a line there, if there's any correlation there. But, yeah, I mean, it does feel like from a leadership standpoint, I mean, who's someone that he would listen to, right? Matthew Stafford would. Does he want to do that? Devontae Adams, he would. Does he want to do that? The guy is Sean McVay. This is a job for Sean McVay. Could Cooper Kupp have kept Puka Nacua in line? I think he could have. I think he has the respect for him, and I think Cooper Kupp just kind of has that. I could see Kupp going into coaching in some capacity, but I don't think this situation in particular, it should fall on a player in your organization. There's a reason why Sean McVay gets paid the kind of money he gets paid to, because it's more than just X's and O's. It's culture. He's built it. It's we, not me. And I think that McVay, this would behoove him to make sure that he's heavily involved in what is going to happen with Puka in the next couple of months. Because if Sean McVay is involved with Puka, who it's already been reported that he had a conversation with him and he's made it very clear about kind of how he wants things to go moving forward. If McVay puts himself out there for Puka and Puka does something else or just does not fall in line, well, then McVay's going to know that, hey, less Snead. I put myself out there and he didn't respect me and he's doing more things that we don't like, and then we're going to have these talks. So I think that would make them feel better about, hey, we know that if he listens to us, then we're going to feel more comfortable about giving that big contract extension. So I still think that Puka in training camp is going to get a big monster deal with the Rams. That's just my prediction. I feel like you're entering an all-in season. At that point, hopefully some time has passed and his head is on straight and things have improved for him one way or the other. And you're not entering sort of a lame duck season where you're having to franchise tag a guy. Because I guarantee you that doesn't feel like it's the best way to get the most out of Puka Nacua, especially when McDuffie gets the big deal and Stafford's getting the big deal. I mean, it's just not – you guys know how it is. If you're at a workplace and you don't feel like you're getting the money you deserve and you're building that resentment and you're looking over there and like, hey – I'm not getting the kind of bread that I deserve. You're kind of letting that permeate throughout the workplace 24/7, 365. And the truth is if there was nothing this offseason and this was the Puka Nacua we saw a couple years ago when he was hanging out with Cooper Kupp and going to Laker games, everything was fine, whatever, this would be a absolute slam dunk no-brainer. So that's why I feel like as long as Puka can let the organization know that, hey, I've learned, I've gotten some help, I'm accountable for the things I've done, I still think Puka Nacua is going to get a massive extension this offseason. But even with that new deal, it does not mean that the Rams do not need to add another wide receiver in the draft. And we're going to talk about that next because there was a Rams wide receiver target that they've been linked to. Well, his stock is falling. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams. The NBA playoffs are here where every possession matters, every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on the action. And here's what I like about it. You can bet just $5 and get $250 in bonus bets. If your first bet wins, the app makes it easy to follow the action with player stats, trends, and matchups all in one place. And during the playoffs, that extra insight really matters when you're looking at stars, role players, and key moments. It just makes the entire playoff experience more engaging from start to finish. So I think I look at this and I look at the Lakers, I look at their chances right now, and I mean, they're going to get healthy. You got this talk that Luka Doncic is going to Germany and to try to get a second opinion on his hamstring, and you're seeing the same thing with Austin Reeves. So they got to get healthy. Right now, the NBA Finals winner, you got the Oklahoma City Thunder at plus 115, the Lakers at a plus 30,000. So I'm still betting on my purple and gold. I love my Lakers. I don't care. They're going to find some magic, some Luka magic, hopefully. But in all honesty, it's getting pretty grim for the Lake Show. Some bad injury luck for them. But, yeah, definitely go to FanDuel. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Okay, here in our third segment, we're going to talk some more wide receiver, but not Puka Nacua, not Devontae Adams, not any current Rams receiver. We're going to talk about some potential future receivers, and we're going to start with Jordan Tyson, a wide receiver out of Arizona State, one that has been consistently mocked in the first round, one that has really shown to be, from an attribute standpoint, a production standpoint, someone that you could take in that 12 to 20 range. Well, his stock is fallen, and there has been some whispers that the fact that he did not participate in Arizona State's pre-draft workouts, that could lead to him sliding to, really, I mean, the Rams could have him, and that could be a reason to take him because he slides to you where he otherwise might be a higher pick, or he could fall even farther than that. There was a lot of scouts that really had him consistently as the third or fourth best receiver in this draft, right there with Carnell Tate as number one, Mekhi Lemon, and Jordan Tyson were seen as that second bucket, and then Omar Cooper Jr. right in that mix too. Those are really the big four in this draft. You don't have those generational talents. You don't have a guy like Jeremiah Smith from next season who could be a number one pick out of Ohio State, guys like that. But still, it's Tate, Lemon, Cooper, and Tyson. Well, things are trending in the wrong direction for some of these guys. But Jordan Tyson is the one that's on the wrong trajectory, and this is from a scouting report from Matt Miller of ESPN saying one player trending the wrong direction leading up to the draft is Arizona State wide receiver Jordan Tyson. In reviewing my grades with a handful of scouts, many remarked that Tyson's hamstring injury and lack of pre-draft workouts could cause him to slide to the back half of the first round. 3 scouts told me that Tyson ranks as the number 4 receiver on their internal boards. He is scheduled to do some personal positional work for NFL teams on April 17th. So that's interesting that he's trying to kind of pick it up later, and things could change from that. But yeah, I mean, if you're a guy like Jordan Tyson, the question is why? I mean, he feels really good about his talent. I mean, he wants to showcase that, and that's kind of my big question. I look at a guy like a Mekhi Lemon at USC's Pro Day. He was out there, and he was at the Combine, and he was talking at the Combine, and we're going to do some more on Mekhi Lemon, yes, tomorrow, but it does look like if the Rams are going to go receiver, that Jordan Tyson, at least right now, doesn't seem like it would make the most sense just because he has dealt with some injury stuff. And we need whoever the Rams should draft to be able to be all gas, no brakes in year one. And I just don't like the idea of young receivers dealing with injuries this early in their career, especially ones that you could look at as, hey, Do we need to get him on our building and get him into our trading methods? I think Mekhi Lemon makes a lot more sense. And we did our first Locked On Rams mock draft today, and at 13 I did select Mekhi Lemon. He was available. He's that third option for Matthew Stafford, but he's someone that I think can be a rock solid number 2. I think he'd be a great wide receiver 3. I'm going to dive deep into his numbers on tomorrow's show to give you guys more on that. But as it stands right now, unless things get really wild, where a player like Reuben Bain or a Jeremiah Love or a Fano, if they want to go offensive tackle, I think the plan is re-up on, extend Puka, get a wide receiver, and let's have the most potent offense in the National Football League next season. And Mekhi Lemon, I know it feels like it's too much of a telegraph obvious choice, but sometimes when it's right there, it's right there. Sometimes you marry the girl next door, right? And he's the guy, he's next door, and he's a hometown kid, and he could be exactly what the Rams need. But that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. And until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.